My name is Bob Otis. I'm an adjunct professor of psychology at Ripon College, and I have the pleasure of being able to teach a course that I absolutely love for several reasons. The course is called Ethology of Killer Whales, and it allows me to share with a number of students, number of select students, the nature of killer whales in general, and also the nature of a particular community of killer whales that lives out in the Puget Sound area. I grew up about 50 miles from San Juan Island in Bellingham, Washington, and I never heard of a killer whale growing up there. I came back to the Midwest, went to graduate school in Michigan, and came to Ripon College in 1973, and it was somewhere maybe in the 1980s that I discovered that right back there in my backyard there were these fascinating animals. When I did my graduate work in the 1960s, I was fascinated with animal behavior. And so I went to the only department I knew where I could, fulfill this fascination, and that was psychology. And I got my PhD in what was then called comparative psychology, what we would today call animal behavior. So I've, spent my career at Ripon College teaching a variety of courses, but the background that I have is in this field called, today we call it animal behavior. So when back in 1990, when my wife and I visited San Juan Island for the first time, and we went out on a whale watching boat, wow, I was just struck. I mean, there's something awesome about being around these whales. I first started my research in 1990, where that is, I first started using the Limekiln Lighthouse as a kind of a base, a laboratory. And I believe it was in 1991 or 1992 that I had a chance to take some Ripon College students out there. We drove out in a van over fall vacation, not in the spring, but in the fall. That lasted for several years, that is going out in the fall. And we didn't see killer whales every time, because that's not a very good time to go out there. But then I believe it was the late 1990s when Ripon College instituted what they called a Maymester. So I have the pleasure of being able to select 8 or 9 college students at Ripon College each year. We meet in this room for, 7 different Monday nights, where I teach them the nuts and bolts of the killer whale, the more science-based aspect to the killer whale. We learn about how to identify them and some of their anatomical and physiological features. And then we go out to San Juan Island in May, where we spend 19 days where they can see scientific research in progress. They can help me in the sense that they learn the protocol that I follow, and when the whales go by, they can shout out if they see a breach or a spy hop or what have you. It's not so much that they develop career aspirations when they're in this class, but rather they take with them an understanding of a little bit of nature that's very precious, that this little bit of nature is in trouble and it needs help. And these students come to understand how they themselves, living in the Midwest, might come to help these animals. And I think they take that with them the rest of their lives. So how do they help killer whales while living in Ripon or Wisconsin or wherever? Oh, the answer is that, they take with them the memory of the whales, and I think that translates frequently into some kind of action on their part, whether it's speaking to politicians or in terms of providing money for various organizations that are seeking to help, not just the killer whale, but the environment in general. And I think that's what the class promotes. These whales are incredible for many reasons, not the least of which is that they're now on the endangered species list, which means they're in trouble, which means that, in my opinion, the best hope for these whales is education. And so for me to be able to teach this class and introduce students to not just what the killer whale is, but the issues that surround it, the threats to its existence, to me is, again, the direction we need to go. But it's also a place where there are several 100,000 people visit each year. And these people are from all over the world. And, you know, I have story after story of wonderful people coming. For example, last summer, I had a couple come from Belgium. And they told me that first of all, I said, what are you doing here? And they said, well, in the largest newspaper in Belgium, there was an article about this park and the whales coming by. So it was natural for us, they said, to get on the plane and fly out to see the killer whales at Limekiln Point State Park. So these students, from Ripon College, when they joined me out there for 3 weeks in this special class, they get to not just see whales, they get to see excited people from all over the world, people who speak vastly different languages, for example. And that, to me, is where learning goes on, because these students from Ripon College have something that most of these tourists want, and that is knowledge. And once they learn that our students have some of that knowledge of the killer whales, they're going to pester them sometimes for a long period of time, asking questions about, why do the whales do what they do, and so on. So that's where learning comes in, when a student can actually share that understanding with other people and get feedback. It's so different, so much different from what they experience in the classroom.
Each May, members of the Ethology of Killer Whales in Focus class travel the 2,000 miles to San Juan Island off the coast of Washington State. We arrived by ferry at the port of Friday Harbor, the port which Jacques Cousteau once said was his second most favorite port in the world. From Friday Harbor, we travel across the island to the cottages at Roche Harbor Marina, our home for the next 19 days. We soon discover that these cottages have all the amenities of home. We always eat very, very well, sometimes joined by other college groups from around the U.S. and Canada, such as the marine biology class from the Pacific Rim Institute pictured here, or by other researchers who share their work with us in the relaxing atmosphere of our living rooms. Each day we travel the 10 miles to the beautiful Limekiln Point State Park, home of the Limekiln Lighthouse, the destination point of some 200,000 visitors each year from all over the world. With the red madrona trees along the shoreline, the snow-capped Olympic Mountains to the south, and the city of Victoria some 7 miles across Haro Strait, one would be hard-pressed to find a more beautiful spot in this country. The lighthouse becomes our base each day, from which we can explore the island, eat our lunches, and enjoy our studies. Relaxing is encouraged, to truly experience the sights and sounds of the killer whale's world. For some, an early morning game of chess is the key to waking up each day. Lunch provides its own challenges. Members of the southern resident community of killer whales often swim by very close to our shoreline, from May through September, making this arguably the best publicly accessible land-based site in the world to watch orcas in their natural environment. Hydrophones make it possible for us to hear the vocalizations of passing orcas, thanks to the Sea Sound remote sensing network provided by the Whale Museum in Friday Harbor. Our reactions to these amazing animals is understandable. We actually get to know many individual whales by their saddle patches and dorsal fins, like Polaris J28, here with her recognizable notch. Adult males, with their nearly 6-foot-high dorsal fins, tend to tower over the adult females, whose dorsal fin is about 3 feet tall. As scientists, we learn to categorize their many surface behaviors, like the spy hop, the pectoral fin slap or pec slap, the cartwheel, and the breach. But there are other fascinating animals to enjoy at this pristine site, like the humpback whale, here a mother and her calf. The minke whale, stellar sea lions, harbor seals, river otters, the same species we have in Wisconsin, though here they live as marine mammals. Bald eagles, sometimes foraging for scraps left over after the orcas have passed by. The myriad of animals living in tide pools like this starfish here. And banana slugs at an intimate moment. To truly appreciate this area, we travel to the top of Mount Constitution on neighboring Orcas Island, where the view of the many San Juan Islands is amazing, as are the many waterfalls on Orcas Island. Commercial whale watching boats provide an up-close perspective on the killer whale's world. But the view from a kayak is even closer. Perhaps the ultimate learning experience comes on that day when all the second graders on the island visit us at the lighthouse. It's a day when we can share our knowledge and fascination for the orca, as seen here with Lauren and Natalie, Ashley and Connor, Paul, Colin, Chelsea and Connor, and Natalie again.
We have a chance to teach them, if that's the right word, about these whales. Even though these kids grew up on San Juan Island, many of them have never seen a killer whale. So on that one day when they all join us at the lighthouse, some 60 of them, I let my students in my class actually break up into smaller groups and talk to these kids. And that is something to behold. I think the smiles and the sense of wonder in these kids and the sense of accomplishment in my students when they talk to these kids is to me what education is all about.
Each in-focus student has a project to complete with the goal of sharing their work with all of us at the end of our stay on the island. One such project is shown here. What began as a pile of garbage culminated in sculptures of a mother orca and her calf, illustrating the harmful impact of plastic bottles and other toxic throwaway materials on the whale's environment. Killer whales are among our most precious natural resources, and they need our help. This community was placed on the endangered species list in 2005. This experience on San Juan Island will remain with us forever, sometimes even changing our lives as we come to recognize the broad context within which we must come to understand this magnificent creature. That to understand the killer whale, we must recognize that it resides in the perspectives of poets, musicians, artists, the many businesses that depend on the whale for their very existence, the perspectives of all religious faiths, especially those of Native Americans and First Nations people, as well as scientists. Perhaps the poet can best capture our feelings over the past 19 days.
As the waves ebb and flow, my emotions follow in suit. This creature, so amazing, has captured me. It pulls at the strings of my heart. How can something control me like this? I want to study their every move and observe what they're going to do next. Do they see me? Do they hear me? Can they sense my presence? I don't want to move an inch from where I am, for I am afraid that this mystical feeling will lose its meaning. I cannot believe what happened before my eyes, for now I will just listen to the waves ebb and flow as I let this moment sink into my being and become permanent in my soul.
In my opinion, the killer whale is one of this country's most precious natural resources. And every year when I spend my summers out on San Juan Island, I see the faces of people when they're watching these whales swim by. It is something to behold, and I don't have the words to capture all of it. And that's where I think a poet does a much better job than I do, and maybe a musician. You know, maybe an artist can capture this much better than a scientist can. So part of the focus of my killer whale class is to get my students to recognize that there are many different ways, many different perspectives of looking at this incredible animal, and that to really understand them, I want my students to feel comfortable with looking at it from the perspective of a poet, for example, or a musician, as well as a scientist. And indeed, I continually tell my students that if they want to be a good scientist, then they should not be uncomfortable with dabbling in the arts. I mean, I can wax poetically for hours about the science that I enjoy, because I am a scientist. But at the same time, you know, when I'm with the whales, it's the people around me who are excited and yelling, and something about the killer whale that's always fascinated me, and that is the kinds of emotions that are emitted from people who are watching. I mean, I see people crying and laughing and yelling and screaming, and I think that probably every human emotion possible comes out when these whales swim by. Now, I suppose there are other events in North America that elicit the same reaction, but the killer whale does. And what it is about the whale that does it, I'm not really sure. But when I see students reacting to the whales when they swim by, and when they, after the whales pass by, when they sit around and talk about what they experienced, that's my favorite part. It's when they talk to people from other countries, from other lands, which speak different languages. That's my favorite part. And when I bring in scientists to talk to my students, it's the kind of fascination that they have coming from the Midwest now, and that's important to point out. But the fascination they have for sitting next to a world-renowned scientist who has spent his or her whole life studying these whales, and the respect they have for that person, and the recognition that these famous scientists are humans, and they sit right next to you. They're not something you just read about in a book, but rather they're there eating dinner with us and laughing and joking, and that, to me, is so important for my students. I want them to experience this aspect of science, that it's a human endeavor. And humans have feelings, and they have stories to tell, and I think my students get a chance to experience all of that during this class. What it is about the whale that does it, I'm not really sure. I've asked scientists, what is it about the killer whale that, that really is amazing? And they'll say, well, they're big, they're beautiful, they're awesome. Then I ask second graders, what is it about the killer whale that makes you feel really good? And they'll say, well, they're big, they're exciting, they're all the same vocabulary. I suppose we could be more articulate as to what it is, but the whale does that. And when the whales swim by and I see somebody next to me down on their hands and knees praying, or I see tears, and I've seen this many times, tears coming down, I think, wow, there's something really special going on here. I don't know how many students have told me that they have been places where, for example, a few years ago, a student told me they were down somewhere in Georgia and they went through a cafeteria and they had their killer whale shirt on, and somebody came up to them and noticed the shirt and began to talk about when they visited this place, and it led to a very extensive conversation. And I've heard that comment from so many people. I remember one year when we were driving into Yellowstone Park, and the person at the gate asked us where we were going, and we told them, and the next thing I know, the guy started telling us all about J and K and L pods and how much he remembers each of these whales when he spent some time on San Juan Island. So the list goes on and on. There are just dozens of stories like this. Today, we have so many Ripon people coming back to visit the lighthouse where I am in the summer that now I refer to the lighthouse as Ripon West. And I think that captures what I see every summer. That is, one Ripon student after another who comes wandering in without any announcement and says, well, I'm back. And, usually I certainly welcome them with a hug because I know the warmth that they emit when they revisit a place that they spent 19 days. And that to me is also very, very special. And it really means a lot to me that indicate that, they got something out of it that lasted a long time. And so schools like Ripon College, I believe, are worth every penny. I think that they offer students, a human element to science, in my case, science. And they allow professors to express that humanity in the science that they teach. And again, I have to thank Ripon College because they allow me to not just pursue my research in the summertime, but to share it with students. That to me is awesome. It's the word, I guess.
We'll let you warm up with the chicken dance here, and then we're going to do the contest, okay? So get your practice going in here. When this song ends, we're going to start. we've got quite a long registration line, so the 9 o'clock start might be postponed just a little bit here. But we're going to try to get everybody registered as soon as possible. You're still going. Yes, you are. Again, you're going to be going through the Ripon campus here. Right foot.
You put your right foot out, you put your right foot in.
And shake it all about.
You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about.
The other one.
You put your left foot in, you put your left foot out, you put your left foot in and out.
Oh, I think I figured out how to keep kids quiet. Put a microphone in front of them, huh?
You put your left arm in, you put your left arm out, you put your left arm in and then you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about.
That is your finish line. All right, kids, you got to give them an applause. Cheer them on. On your mark. Get set. Go. Oh, and we have a winner. The bear.
He's got tennis shoes. That's no fair.
And Fang fell down. Fang is injured. Other mascots, come and help Fang. He's injured. Help him cross the finish line. Help him cross the finish line. Hey, let's get Fang a On your mark. Get set. Go.
Oh, it's Kolor, okay. Careful, a little bit.
One more for you guys. 1, 2, 3.
Stand by the ladder so we can see how much color you've got all over you. Be sure to keep it in your hands until that final toss so we can all toss it up at the same time.
All right, is everyone ready? All right, here we go. 3,